Alexander's deadliest gamble. How Gaugamela broke an empire. Darius had the bigger army, the better ground, and a battlefield engineered to kill Alexander. He chose the open plain. He leveled the earth for his chariots. He spread out the weight of an empire and waited for the smaller army to walk into the trap. By every sane rule, Alexander should have died at Gaugamela. Instead, in a few violent minutes, he turned Darius's perfect battlefield into the moment the Persian Empire began to crack. That is why this battle matters, not because it was loud, not because it was famous, but because this is one of the clearest examples in history of a commander looking at a stronger enemy on ground designed against him and still finding the one point where the whole system could be broken. If Alexander loses here, his invasion ends in the dust of Mesopotamia. He becomes a cautionary tale, a brilliant young king who pushed too far and got swallowed by distance, numbers, and arrogance. If Darius loses, Persia does not just lose a battle, it loses the belief that the great king can still control events. And once that belief starts to die, empires don't collapse all at once. First, they crack. Then people start calculating. Then the rot spreads. That is the real story of Gaugamela. And the terrifying part is this: Darius was not stupid. He was not passive. He was not handing Alexander some easy victory. His plan made sense. That is exactly what makes Alexander's success feel so brutal. Darius did what a powerful ruler should do. He chose open ground because open ground favors cavalry, room, and numbers. He prepared the field so his scythe chariots could hit at speed. He used the size of his army the rational way, stretch the smaller force, pressure multiple points, and force elite troops to be strong everywhere at once. This was not panic. This was Persia finally saying, enough. No more reacting to this Macedonian king. This time, the empire would choose the field, shape the geometry, and crush him properly. So the question at Gaugamela is not simply how Alexander won, it is how the hell he beat a plan that actually made sense. The battlefield itself was part of the weapon. A wide, hard plain, open sky, room for cavalry to move and for the Persian line to spread far beyond the Macedonian wings. The scythe chariots were there to do more than kill. Their job was to make men flinch. In battles like this, fear is a weapon before steel is. Darius placed himself in the center because the center is where decision lives. If the king holds, the army still feels like one thing. If the king moves, everyone notices. Alexander came in with fewer men but far tighter cohesion. The phalanx was the anvil, dense, disciplined, hard to break from the front. His elite infantry were the connectors, flexible troops who could move where the phalanx could not, holding dangerous spaces together. And then there was the real blade in his hand, the companion cavalry. Not cavalry for show, not cavalry for harassment, cavalry built for one concentrated act of violence in one decisive place. Before the battle, Alexander was advised to attack at night. He refused. That decision matters more than it sounds. A night attack might have won, but it also would have blurred the meaning of the victory. In darkness, the defeated can blame confusion. Alexander wanted daylight. He wanted Darius beaten in view of his own army. He wanted the defeat to feel undeniable. So, while Darius kept a massive army tense and alert against surprise, Alexander let his men rest. That is the first lesson of Gaugamela. Great commanders do not just move men, they manage readiness. The decisive moment does not wait politely for you to recover. It arrives when it arrives. And when the battle begins, it is not one neat collision. It is several violent problems happening at once. Dust, noise, cavalry pressure on the flanks, infantry grinding in the center, messengers moving through, confusion, one section holding, another section wavering, neither side seeing the whole picture clearly. Darius opens with the weapon he prepared the field for, the scythe chariots. This should have been terrifying. It was terrifying. But Alexander had an answer. Not a flashy one, a disciplined one. Open lanes, break momentum, hit the horses, let the chariots pass through controlled gaps instead of crashing into a panicked wall. That is Alexander in miniature. He sees a weapon designed to create fear, and he turns it into a technical problem. Then he solves it. But the battle is not won there, because Darius's real plan is still alive. Stretch Alexander until the line snaps. Use width. Use cavalry. Use pressure on multiple points. Force the smaller army to spend itself holding together. And for a while, it almost works. This is the part people flatten when they tell Gaugamela like it was some effortless masterpiece. It wasn't. It was dangerous as hell. Alexander's left wing was under real pressure, the kind of pressure where a smaller army can go from holding to finished very quickly. If that side collapses, Alexander can win the center and still lose the war. That is how thin the margin is. And now comes the move that makes the battle famous. He advances obliquely to the right. That sounds technical. It is, but it is also vicious, because now Darius has a nasty choice. If he stays fixed, Alexander begins slipping away from the ground prepared for the chariots and away from the clean geometry Persia wanted. If he follows, the Persian line has to extend, shift, and react sideways under pressure. Darius responds. And again, this is not stupidity. This is the trap. He makes the correct-looking decision in a situation where correct-looking decisions have hidden costs. The cost is shape. As Persian units stretch to match Alexander's movement, the line stops being seamless, not broken, not routed, just slightly wrong. And in ancient battle, slightly wrong can get you killed, because battles are local before they are general. A unit supports its neighbor, or it doesn't. A gap is tiny until someone drives through it. That is what Alexander is waiting for. Not a giant hole, not some ridiculous opening, just a seam. And somewhere in the dust and adjustment, a seam appears. Enough for a blade. Enough for Alexander. This is the real genius of Gaugamela. Not bravery, not believing in himself. That crap is cheap. The genius is that he forces Darius to move, watches the line change shape, and recognizes the exact second when still holding becomes not quite connected. That is when he commits. He forms the strike group, companion cavalry at the point, elite support around it, a wedge aimed not at the whole Persian army, but at the center where Darius commands. That is the key. Alexander is not trying to kill everyone in front of him. He is trying to break the enemy's ability to decide. Because if the king is the node, the battle changes the second that node starts moving. But let's not romanticize this. This could have gone horribly wrong. If the wedge fails to punch through, Alexander gets trapped in front of the strongest part of the Persian army. If the Persian center closes faster than expected, the seam becomes a coffin. If the Macedonian left collapses while Alexander commits, then he wins his heroic charge and loses the actual battle behind him. That is the cost of his style. It is brilliance right on the edge of disaster. So, why do it? Because sometimes the only safe move is the decisive one. If Alexander refuses the gamble, he accepts the grind, and the grind favors Darius. More cavalry, more room, more men, more time. So Alexander commits. And if you're into battle stories where one decision changes the fate of an empire, hit like, subscribe, and drop the next commander or battle you want in the comments, because this channel is built for exactly these moments. Now back to the charge. Wedge goes in. Horses screaming, men compressed into each other. The battle suddenly feels smaller and more violent because everything that matters is happening in one brutal point of pressure. And Darius sees it. He sees the geometry failing. He sees the danger rising toward his own position. And now the king has the worst problem any ruler can face. Stay and risk capture, or move and let the whole army see the center shift. He withdraws. Call it retreat. Call it flight. The effect is the same. The king is no longer the anchor. And once that happens, the battle starts spreading psychologically. Units still fighting now. No, the center is moving. Confidence breaks before formations do. The story turns poisonous fast. But Alexander still is not finished, because this is the moment that proves he is more than just a gambler. Reports come in that his left is under severe strain. He could keep chasing Darius and try to end everything with one dramatic capture. Instead, he turns back. That is command maturity. He understands that victory is not the exciting part. Victory is your army still existing when the dust settles. That is the second lesson of Gaugamela. Shock succeeds when it is prepared. You create weakness, then hit it before it can be repaired. But shock is always a gamble. If you bet the war on one thrust, you must know when to stop gambling and start securing the field. After Gaugamela, the Persian Empire does not vanish instantly. Empires do not die that neatly, but something essential breaks, the belief that the center can still guarantee control. Cities begin recalculating. Governors begin thinking. Allies begin watching differently. That is why this battle matters so much. Darius chose the field. Darius brought the numbers. Darius prepared the ground. And Alexander still forced the one moment that mattered, then struck directly at the center of decision. That is not random genius. That is controlled violence applied to the right problem at the right second. So why was Alexander great at Gaugamela? Not because he was fearless. Fearless is cheap. He was great because he was selective under pressure. He forced reaction. He stretched the line. He found the seam. And then he bet everything on a strike that would have destroyed him if he had been wrong by minutes. That is greatness under risk, not gambling blindly, shaping the board until the gamble becomes necessary, and then having the nerve to take it. And that is the lesson that still matters. Don't attack strength just because it is in front of you. Create the opening first. Then hit the point the whole system depends on. Next episode, we stay in the world of command, under pressure, but with a different kind of brilliance. A commander who did not win by speed and shock, but by making the battlefield feel smaller and smaller until the enemy ran out of room to think.